So pelvic floor breathing, this is actually how our body should be breathing. When we're born, we breathe mostly into the chest, right? We usually breathe through the mouth with a large intake valve, and we are able to freely breathe into the lungs. We don't need to worry about regulating the nervous system so much because we're dependent on our caregivers. They regulate our nervous system or dysregulate it, right? But we take on their patterns. And so once we do the chest breathing, then it can be kind of shallow, right? We want to start to move it into the body. I learned belly breathing. I was having panic attacks in high school from just a lot of anxiety. And I was taught belly breathing, so I couldn't get my muscles to move, it's chest breathing shallow. And so I was taught belly breathing that helped me to calm my nerves, kind of get it, a little bit deeper in the body. It starts to activate the diaphragm. And the diaphragm I consider kind of like the hymen of the breath. We want to break it in, right? But we don't want to stop there. We want to start, so we're breaking it in so that we can feel mobility and gain some relationship with it. So then we can start to draw it downward, create that vacuum space so that the breath can move into the body. Because when we're breathing, we're not actually sucking breath in through our nose, like this, our nostrils would be so strong. but it's actually air pressure going on around us, so it's just us relaxing our muscles to create that vacuum space to allow the breath in and receive the breath, right? And then using our muscles to compress and push the air out. If we're not compressing the air for, creating that Kegel effect on the exhale, we're leaving this reservoir of stale air, or, we're not compressing the organs and cleansing the organs with compression and release. Also the polyvagal system, our vagus nerve isn't getting exercised, it's not getting lengthened and stretched on the inhale or compressed on the exhale with all the digestive system, right? So this is our main pump of the body. We really want to get it functioning. We don't want to stop in the belly and kind of break that spinal connection. We want to move it all the way down to the base of the spine, the sacrum, where our nerves from that broadband highway of information goes from our body to our brain and spreads out into our legs, animates us, moves us, connects us to the earth. This is our grounding, right? If we're always pulling up and inhaling and lifting on the pelvic floor, we're creating tension. It's not opening to receive oxygen and circulation. And it's not, exercising itself to, so it's just not good. So we want to exercise that and get that pump fully working because it is the dominant pump and it's influencing all the other pumps of the body. So if this one's got a dysfunction or a kink in it, they're all going to pick up on that, and that leads to needing to always reset. Right, I was talking about the grounding. So, if we're closed off in this area, and we're not able to let our energy move down the body through that soft, subtle tissue. We're creating that density, which vibration can't move easily through. Then it gets stuck in the spine, and it's ping-ponging between the base of the spine and the top of the spine. That's toxic masculine, toxic feminine, the extremes of our energies, right? Anxiety and depression. So we're constantly needing to go to class. I'm feeling ungrounded, right? But we can get that breath going to kind of sustain that equilibrium, right? So it just integrates through every muscle. Also, the muscle tone of our body, it starts in the pelvic floor. If we're tight there, everything kind of comes from the root, right? So lots of things to think about. I'm going to show you what it looks like. And here it is in the so it's female pelvis, or vaginal pelvis. And it's a lot like the shoulder girdle, right? These two areas are very connected. The kind of periscope of the neck and the head come up from the base of the body, right? Out through here. For males, it also comes outward. From females, it's inward. So you can feel these muscles within the collarbone. It's a lot like this kind of woven network of muscles that creates a basket. So imagine that was inverted. And so we want to learn to keep these soft. It houses our passageways for our urine and our bowel movements, also the vaginal canal. So it's this woven basket of muscles with openings in between. Kind of creates this segmented diaphragm. It's like a diaphragm, but it's not a full, like a sealed muscular structure. It is made up of many different muscles. And they're all connected to everything that goes on here. So we're having digestive issues, back pain, sciatica, all of that because it's pulling inward and kind of pulling everything up. I work with a lot of men. I do tantric sex education, and what I've noticed as men get older, their body starts to kind of, that pelvic floor kind of sucks their butt up into their body. You see it visually, and have that length of time to see it in motion. So it's, learning how to relax that so that the nervous system can let go, and it's not storing all that overcharge and sending that back up and putting us in that reactive, irritable discomfort, right? So, and a lot of times in yoga class, they'll tell you, breathe into the belly. And one thing you can think about when you hear things like that is breathe into the deepest part of the belly, like right above the pubic bone, and kind of starting to move that downward. We're going to do a few exercises to move into that, but let's start by, let me get into a little bit of massage. I'll make notes just because I'm used to teaching this in such a different setting, so I'm really excited to teach yogis again. So I'm like, get all these ideas, just make sure I get everything. Where is it? What's it look like? Okay. So I'm going to show you in my body what the difference is between the two. But first I'm going to get y'all started on just like kind of massaging the area, warming up to feeling into it. So we'll sit flat on the floor, so you want a more firm surface. I'm just going to rock the body side to side. Feel the sits bones. Notice those muscular connections kind of gliding over the bone. Take a few breaths into that sensation. As you breathe in, think about what I said. It's relaxing the body to receive the breath. So you can think about letting the floor open beneath you, the breath rising up through the body as you open, and take in that breath. Let it sprout out through the base, branch out through the chest. Exhale. Don't worry so much about the exhale. We're not going to worry about clenching just yet. Just inhale, beginning to feel into breathing between those muscles and spreading into that sensation. Now start to bend one knee at a time. You might feel this stretch between the, trying to feel where the hamstrings meet the glutes, that kind of connection in the bone. You can have to twist side to side. Can't feel it yet, maybe exaggerate the movement, put some rocking in it. We're just trying to loosen up those muscles that are kind of pulling on the tighter, smaller, more delicate areas of the pelvic floor. You can also rock the body forward and back by moving the toes and rocking on the heels. And just using our body weight, you can move it all the way out into maybe like the hip joint here, moving into the glutes. It's getting creative. Don't worry what it looks like, but more into what it feels like. It's more tantric. It's sensing into things rather than being more mechanical and being told how to pose. We're embodying it and letting the energy move us into it. So let the energy guide you where you're feeling sensation. We don't want to feel pain. Discomfort is okay. We'll go to the edge. Switch sides. You hear some bloop bloops. Then you're going in circles. Make sure you go the other way as well. Mine always feels pretty. Always hear whenever they sit bones. Helping to soften those connections and just notice. It helps us bring intention into that area and rebuilding that relationship, because the body in our Western culture has been so avoided, right? Especially this area of the body when it comes to our sexual organs. We even give them like names like children would, right? We don't call them what they are. We call them the JJ or ding-a-ling, you know. And so we've, been taught to be disconnected to that. So it may take time, not only physically, but just like, the indoctrination of, not having that connection mentally to what it feels like down there, being told to avoid it or it's shameful or whatever comes up around that. So these things may come out as you start to move some of that stored energy, stored memory from the muscles. It's just something to think about. And so it's just forming that relationship again. It may take time. When I started pelvic floor breathing, it took me like a week to feel into it. And I get frustrated, and I kind of relate it to if you've ever driven a standard car, learned to drive a manual stick. It's that first threshold of when you're stalling out and you're like, I'm never gonna get this, screw this, I'm not gonna do it. And you may feel that, right? Because You know, when we're challenging ourselves to reverse a habit that's been so ingrained, these grooves in our brain, it takes some time, so be patient with yourself. You're working with matter. It can be dense. So now we're going to take this blanket and roll it up and kind of unfold it to this rectangle shape. Roll it up as large as you want. We're going to sit on it, and again, kind of just massaging into the sits bones. I like using the floor a lot when it comes to it, and I love trigger point massage and stuff. Lacrosse balls or anything like that can be a little too intense for this delicate area, or even like just foam rollers. So you could use them, but I place a blanket on top of them, something to cushion and give a little more forgiveness to the surface. And so that's why I like the blankets for working into this area, because then the sensation's not so intense that it's loud and we can't soften into feeling. So here we're just gonna do the same thing, and I'm rolling back and forth. If you find an area of tightness, you're gonna sit there, fold into it. Just breathe. Imagine blowing up a balloon between the hips into that sensation. Even imagine the hips moving apart. As y'all are doing that, I'm going to show you the difference of what it looks like. Wear something tight to this class so I can demo. So I'm going to do belly breath and then pelvic floor breath. First I'm going to do it to the side. I'm going to inhale, belly breath, exhale, belly, spine. Notice my shoulders. And notice my stomach muscles. Now I'm going to do pelvic floor breath. So I'm lengthening through the spine here, spreading between my shoulders and my hips, and my belly actually lengthens and expands. I like to think about it like a flower. A flower roots into the ground, the stalk carries nutrients up and it blossoms out, right? Or a tree, rooting into the ground, growing up the trunk and branching out. So I'll show you from the front what it looks like. You can see a lot of difference in the shoulders and the stomach muscles, how they move. So instead of my belly coming forward, it's actually expanding out, radiating outwards, north and south, east and west. So belly breath, notice my shoulders, not doing much. And pelvic floor breath. I'll let it go backwards. See how my shoulders spread and my body can rise up, but my shoulders are moving down. So you want to think about like a kite. A kite has that horizontal, that vertical structure, but also has that horizontal that helps it catch the wind, right? It's not very in the center because then it would like kind of flip around in the sky, right? Has that tail, so tailbone. Think about that. Like a kite, spreading outward. I'm going to spread through my chest and spread through my hips. So, and I have a video that shows the different, let's see if I have enough balloons, I'll do it for you. It shows the difference of the breath capacity when it comes to pelvic floor breathing compared to belly breathing, compared to chest breathing. And also comparing on the exhale whether or not I do just belly to spine compression and kind of push everything both ways, or I do pelvic floor engagement and lift and move everything up the body, right? Because I want to deplete of air. So if I bring it all down, I got to push it all back up, lift it all back up. So you think about like putting on a wetsuit in the body and lifting, engaging with that elevator sensation rising up through the body. For women, a lot of times I'll do like a Dolores, kind of like that flower imagery of the petals opening on the inhale softly, and exhale, softly closing. You know, we don't want to over contract. We've probably already done a lot of that in our lifetime, so we want to reverse these habits. And we may have to compensate for a while until we get to that balanced state. And for men, you can think about breathing into your balls, and as you exhale, lift your balls, the muscles you would use to lift your balls. So those muscles you would use to stop urinating. And you also may feel on the inhale, like kind of letting the buttocks flare out and anus release. So it kind of feels like almost pushing to go, but not going there. But we want to kind of stretch into that sensation, but don't strain it too much to where you're like, oh, this is making me need to poop. But if anything starts to move and get stimulated, that's a good sign. And please feel free. The bathrooms are back there. So I have a few balloons. I think I've already used them, but it'll give you an idea. Let's switch out this to rolling between the inner thigh connection here. So the pelvic floor attaches between the sits bones and then the tailbone and the pubic bone. And kind of rings around, so it's all, you know, lining that opening. So here we're just gonna kind of, I like to kind of angle it so it's getting in that crease. You can kind of slide over that bone there, feel in the connection, go inward or outward, and kind of stretch that away from the body. With the legs too, what's really nice is to kind of twist everything outward and away from like moving in towards the pelvic floor. So you can do things kind of like this, smoothing it to the outer line. Just kind of rubbing into the thighs. You don't need to do any leg work, but it feels nice and we're here, so you might as well. Rubbing the thigh calves. So I'm going to show you the balloon stuff while y'all work on that. So first I'm going to do everything with engaging the pelvic floor so we can see the difference in the sizes, just like how much breath we actually pull into the body with that action. So I'm going to do chest breath. Whoops, okay, I'm going to breathe in my mouth. I am lifting to move that air out. Belly breath. And now the chest breath, you can see like how, because I'm only breathing it, I have free range to go into my lungs. So this is about how much my lungs hold. Probably get more if I stretched into it. I think you'll see the comparison here. All right, pelvic floor breath. Here's the difference. Here's chest breath and pelvic floor breath. Pretty comparable. It shows you how wide I'm able to spread my chest when I'm, you know, also lengthening and ballooning down there. Because that helps support, right? It's like that stemming. It helps kind of, you know, it starts to lift up and help the ribs are very flexible, right? And they can really kind of bend and open to let that bouquet of the breath spread beneath the collarbone. But when we're belly breathing and making the center the widest part of the body, then we're actually pulling the diaphragm this way, makes it harder to move down, and then we're also tapering the shoulders and the pelvic floor, right? In order to get the widest part here. In order to get my spine lengthened, which shortens our spine. In order to lengthen my spine, I need to suction, kind of siphon through the center, cinch into the center, so that I can push that breath in between these two areas that really, you know, don't have that mobility of the center. And that's why we learn the belly breath, because it's easy just to move and displace the organs. So we're not, you know, we're not pulling air into the belly. You can switch sides on this. We're not pulling air into the belly. Unless you have a punctured lung, you're not getting air into the body anywhere except for the lungs. Maybe when you're eating and you get like, you know, you swallow an air bubble, and that's painful, so you would know if you had, you know, air in the body. So this is just displacing the organs forward rather than pushing them down to tone the pelvic floor and then lifting and gathering and compressing them all. And now I'm going to take pelvic floor breath, chest breath. I'm going to open chest breath and show you the difference between belly breath using only belly to spine compression. Belly to spine compression here. So this is not engaging the pelvic floor to move all the air out of the body. So I'm leaving this reservoir, which isn't too much here, but this reservoir of stale air that I'm not moving out, but it's also limiting my next inhale, right? So that my inhale is actually not this big, you know, more like this. So then we're comparing pelvic floor breathing to belly breath. You can see, you can even hear in the length of me taking a breath how I move into that second reservoir. That's when we kind of move into that moment of pause where we think the breath is done, but then maybe starting to extend it, you know. That's kind of where it starts because we're used to using this part. So it's going to take a little time to start to move that bulbous, idea downward, and allow those muscles to adjust. So we're gonna use the roll to help get some proprioception into feeling where these muscles are in the body and what it feels like to use them. So unroll the roll a bit. We don't want it too intense. But between the hip bones, the pelvic floor is not sitting flush against the ground. So we're just using this roll to raise the surface of the floor up to our pelvic floor. So it doesn't need to be too big, but we want to be able to breathe into it and feel it. So if you need to adjust it, feel free to do so. Having my legs out, it's just a preference on the user. Just gonna move side to side, feeling the roll, comfortable. If there's any pinchy areas or too much compression, loosen it up a bit. All right. And so let's take a hand to the chest, and then a hand at the base of the ribs, right at the end of the sternum. And so when we're taking the inhale, if anybody know about bandhas, familiar with bandhas? So when the inhale, we create ujjayi, we have a slight contraction in the Jaladhara bandha, our throat lock. To create, so when we breathe through the mouth, we have that large intake valve. Then we start breathing through the nose, we have a smaller regulator so we can regulate the breath better into the body, pull it more fully, and then also move heat out. So just start breathing and noticing the warmth between the hands. And just maybe giving light color to the breath and watch it move between those palms, connecting those two areas. And so when we create that ujjayi breath, it sounds like this ocean breath or Darth Vader breath. Creating that slight constriction in the back of the throat. I want to think about doing the same thing in my Uddiyana Bandha, this place right at the sternum and the base of the ribs. It's almost like getting punched in the belly. Like imagine you're about to take a punch where you kind of contract those muscles just slightly there. A ghost punch, right? And just feeling that lightly kind of contract to create that siphoning to draw the breath down and lengthen through the belly into the pelvic floor. Imagine blowing the pelvic floor up like a balloon. Let's move that bottom hand to right above the pubic bone at the low belly and start to draw that line of breath, color, and light a little bit longer down into the body. Maybe even down into the floor, rooting through the ground, the energy of your body, flirting with the energies of the earth. Exhale, lift and gather and pull those energies up the spine. Watch the breath light up the spine, moving the breath out through the chest, maybe knitting the ribs in, zipping up through the front panel of the body. Inhale, release it all downward, ballooning between the pelvic floor, between the hip bones. And then exhale, lift and gather the pelvic floor and deflate that balloon with the muscles of your pelvic floor. Inhale, release, let that balloon expand between the hips. Exhale, lift and gather. You can also open your eyes here. You can also think about the pelvic floor, even the lungs as hands, fingers. And inhaling, spreading the palm of that pelvic floor. Exhale, trying to lift that roll beneath you. Inhale, releasing the fingers, spreading through the fingers. Feel the breath moving in between the webbing of the fingers, the pelvic floor, and the lungs. Spreading through that chest, creating that kite sensation of really gathering that wind. Exhale, lift and gather, push it all out. Inhale, spreading the palm, the fingers of the pelvic floor, widening around the roll. Exhale, gently lift, gather, move that energy up through the spine, out through the top of the head if you can. Inhale, let it drop down all the way into the earth, lighting up the ground beneath you. Exhale, lift and gather. So that's kind of feeling into where it is in the body, right? And what those muscles might feel like. Again, if they're really tight and tense, when I went home and did my first manual inspection, it felt like bone in the lining, like petrified was a perfect word. So it was like the muscle had gotten so tight and dense, it was just gripping. There was just so much tension and trauma stored in the body. And when we're holding that much tension and pressure on these delicate systems, they'll become weak, and they're too tight and they can't move and become mobile. It leads to things like incontinence, it can lead to erectile dysfunctions, hernia, prolapse, what's the other one? Hemorrhoids. So the body, these soft tissues, if everything's too tight, they find little holes to get out of, right? But it also, if it's too tight and clamping down on our fluid channels, then our body and our hormone system can't pump correctly. Things get backed up, blocked up, we become sick. And it also clamps down on our nerves, we become dissociated and disconnected from like parts of the body. So keeping that connection healthy, that polyvagal system, functioning, it is informing all the other nerves, so we want to get that one healthy. So we're going to do some more feeling into it and kind of the structure of it, but I'm going to go through a few kind of easy, basic things that we can do to feel into it, just to get you a foundational understanding. So let's come up to standing here. So once we learn the pelvic floor breath, and it's kind of like going through everything in life and noticing our habitual movements and, am I pulling up, is this supporting my pelvic floor, my health, or we're working against that. And it's when we can start to do that, especially in yoga classes, and you may notice some backwards cueing when it comes to that. And we can work with resistance and do things backwards. If say I had a really loose pelvic floor, then I might want to work with resistance to create tension and structure, right? But most people have that tight pelvic floor. It's sitting in our desks, sitting in our cars, not really learning how to breathe properly, and just kind of the amount of tension. We are all, toxic masculinity is not just about guys. It's a community issue. It's a global issue. So we're just trying to bring in that feminine energy back into the world, that softness into our life, right? And we start by doing that by bringing our body there back to equilibrium, because we can't create a world if we don't know how to live it in our bodies. And so one of the ones I noticed that stands out the most, and this is one Delora taught us to help, reset the body and what does it feel like? Because it can all be confusing. We've been doing backwards for so long. So if I'm doing backwards breathing and I'm lifting up on my pelvic floor, my inhale and exhaling down, then it makes sense to inhale up, right, this goddess squat. Inhale up, collect a breath, and exhale down, drop it all, right? Loosen, let it go. That sets us up for that prolapse, hemorrhoid, incontinence thing, because we're not creating that hammock of support, we're just letting it all go slack, and we're actually pushing our organs down by just bringing that down and not creating that basket of support. And then on the inhale, we're lifting up and tightening, so it's not getting any oxygen. And so what we want to do is, as the legs start to spread, I'm creating that space to breathe into my pelvic floor and move my hip bones away from each other. So I like to bring my hands into it too. Everything's moving the same way, I don't have to think too hard. Inhale and open. Exhale, lifting down, and begin to zip up like putting on that wetsuit, creating that structure in the A-frame, right, in the body. Inhale and open, fuel up with breath. Exhale, use it to lift you. Inhale and open. It doesn't have to be hard. Life should be joyful. Movement should be joyful and healthy. That's what healthy is. It's happy. Inhale and open. Supported. Exhale, lift up. And also do ballet. When we do stuff like plies, right, for our jumps, we want to use our plies, use our knees to get us up there, but also catch us so we don't break our knees, right? But it makes more sense for me to inhale, fill up with air. Exhale, use it to lift me off the ground than to exhale down, lift myself up into the air, right? I can inhale here, exhale, then inhale to rebound from that, right, and then come down. But what gets me up is my exhale. So things like this, when we're doing this kind of stuff, you want to think about that, right? What am I doing? Am I creating more tension and contraction, exacerbating my issues? So I hate to see people putting all this work in, and I see y'all working and going to classes and doing it so wonderfully. But the more we're belly breathing, we're actually exacerbating it more quickly, right? So we want to learn to apply that full body, what I call, so the chest breathing I call the infantile breath, belly breath is the adolescent breath, and pelvic floor breathing is the mature breath. It is how we should be breathing into the body. This takes us a while to understand development and get choreographed in our body. So we learn it later. Well, we learn it when we need to. Everything happens for a reason, right? So let's go through that one a few more times. So inhaling, open. Exhale, lift and gather. Zipping up through the body here. Inhale and open. Spread through the body, radiating through the belly. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, open. Exhale, lift and gather. And so if I wanted to create tension, it's kind of a really vulnerable position to be in, to exhale backwards and lift up on my pelvic floor as I'm moving down. So if that were something you needed to do, I would say grab a chair or a counter, stay in the position, and inhale and exhale. You can try it here now. So we can come into God a squat. Inhale, blowing up that balloon in the pelvic floor, because you really feel it kind of pulling against the exhale. Lift and gather. Inhale, and kind of pulse it if you want. Start to feel into that movement. It becomes more agile over time if you're not feeling anything again. You're starting to work at it and we're chipping it away. Starting to feel safe by your knowledge and understanding of it so that your body can start to let go. And come up. I don't work too hard. Wiggle it out. A nice way I like to think about to help me soften into the pelvic floor is to imagine my tailbone extends like I do have a tail. And so imagine that tail kind of coming up. I have a big fluffy cat tail and just sway side to side. So this is soft moving, my tailbone moving out and swaying, right? You can also think about breathing through the genitals, letting the breath move and extend through them. Lots of different visualizations. Let's come back onto the floor. It's getting hot in here. I had to turn the air on. I'm gonna turn it on. Go down onto the floor, get comfy for a moment. We're going to come down onto our backs, knees bent. You're going to watch me for a second, and I'm going to show you, and I'll come around and help you guys out. So what I'm going to do is just kind of a game to play to kind of help me learn to recorrect my body. Everybody's different. We have tension in different areas. Our orchestration of our muscles is a little bit different in everyone. So it's going to help us have our own personalized, how do I move into this, just kind of creative improv. So what I'm trying to do here is I place my hands on my belly. And first I want to kind of start to breathe in and not let my belly rise up, but spread out beneath my hands, right? So that's the first rule. Then you can also think about maybe your chest rising as the shoulders widen and allow that to move up. You want the chest to move up instead of the belly. So if you find your belly moving up rather than the chest, kind of tuning into how can I reorganize my muscular movement to help me move that downward. Think about even drawing the belly, the stomach into the hips, right? Pulling all the organs down to the hips, suctioning them through, or opening the mouth at the base of the body and breathing in through that. So we're coming up to our backs. You can have your knees bent or legs flat if you want to put the bolster beneath your knees. Just getting comfy. We want to kind of take out any tension in the rest of the body so you can focus on this area. Placing your hands on the belly, feeling the belly spread beneath your fingers, out to the sides. You can also think about like a television. Maybe related to like the old TVs are kind of bulbous, like they kind of round it out so you can screen. And these days we have really flat TVs and they're really wide and really tall. So maybe taking that old television, letting that screen flatten out, and really wide as the room, as tall as the room. Just breathing into that pain, the plane of the stomach.
Is anything supposed to get tense or no?
I'm sorry?
Is anything supposed to get tense or no?
Shouldn't feel too much tension. It's just not, nah. If you want to.
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just
Right now we're just kind of moving into not letting the belly rise. You know, of breathing into the belly. So think about the belly staying low. Try to lift my hands, yeah. And then instead of it coming upward, think about drawing that energy downward. So at the top of your breath, imagine the breath's not over, that's only half of it. And keep on taking that inhale as you move those organs down, creating that vacuum space. Keep a little bit of tone in the belly. There you go, that's better. Rise in this moment. It's just kind of stepping into what we move towards. Kind of an exercise in between. Feel how your body's moving. Close to yeah. So just placing the hands on the belly so as you breathe in. I want the belly to stay low. We want it to stay. You don't want your hands to rise. So the idea of how can I breathe and not let my hands move upward. As I move the breath in the body. So the chest and lift up. I'm also going to move my organs down and extend through the spine. So just letting the breath move between the shoulders. Think about that tight opening through the shoulders. And lengthening through that tail of the kite. Catching the breath. So the stomach is the kite. Right, breathe out like a sail. Catching the breath. Exhale. Yeah, just kind of playing with movement in my body. We're gonna go into another one. That might help a little as well. So y'all know cat cow, and you pretty much are doing the correct breathing on the cat cow. Inhale as we arch back and exhale, coming into cat, into that C curve, compressing everything out. And so while we're on the ground, we can move into cat cow here. We can get rid of the noise of the arms and the legs, sensations there, so we can focus on the pelvic floor. Also, if we have tightness in the sacrum, we're gonna use the weight of our body to kind of massage it as we're exercising. So not too deep. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna inhale, lengthen through the belly, expand through the chest, and expand through the hips. So widening the shoulders, widening the hips, blowing up that balloon in the hips, and letting the pelvis kind of rock forward. Looks like, if you want to look up here for a moment, I'll demo it for you. So as we inhale, really arching my back, like popping my butt into the floor, creating that big arch. And as I exhale, I'm just starting to tuck the tailbone, and I'm closing off that space at the low back. So I'm kind of wagging my tail here. I'm not really getting my chest or my shoulders too much involved, except for spreading through, thinking about that kite, and widening through the shoulders, widening through the hips, inviting the breath down the spine. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, cow. Exhale, slight cat. I'm just tucking the tail. We're not going to push into bridge here just yet. Inhale, rolling the hips forward. I'll come around here. So as I inhale, I'm going to lengthen, you send that breath down the spine. Really pop your booty into the floor, arch your back. Yeah, yeah. And then exhale, start to curl, tuck the tailbone. Just move it up towards the ceiling, not lifting it yet, but yeah, ceiling. And you got it. Inhale, lengthen all the way down. Blow up that balloon through the hips, let it rock your hips forward. Pop your booty into the floor. There you go. Exhale, lift and gather. Laminate the body down on the floor. Exhale. Inhale, lengthen it down to work the hip. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, walking the hips forward. Pop that booty into the floor. Exaggerate it. Exhale. Inhale. Lengthen down. Perfect. Exhale. Lift and gather. Zip up through the spine. Nice. Inhale. How you doing? Inhale, pop that booty. So arch your back. Arch your back. We'll lift it up. Settle down. Yeah, so it's easier. Inhale, there you go. Cow pose. Arching the back, pop that butt in the floor. Exhale, start to lift the tail. Just tuck it. Like tuck it up towards the ceiling. Don't lift it off the floor. And then inhale, drop it back down. Exhale, move it out. Inhale, open. Fill up those hips, blow up that balloon. Exhale, deflate the balloon, pelvic floor, zip it up the body. right? Imagine the breath moving like that, totally inflating, how that booty is sweet. And then exhale, and then lifting the out, deflating and rolling back up. Like that. Inhale, kind of keep a little bit of tone here to create that suction in the belly, move it down the hips. And then draw that belly and the stomach all the way into the hip bones. Exhale, move it and press it up towards the ribs. Inhale, organs move in between the hips. The diaphragm moves down, creating that space for breath. And then exhale, right organs up into the ribs. Exhale. One pop again. Inhale, roll forward. Exhale, lifting it up, draw it, twist the pelvic floor. Release the load. Tuck your toes.
Sure, I'm trying to learn.
Yes, that's fine. You know, we start to notice those things about ourselves, like, oh, maybe this is right, that's hard as well. Inhale, let the hips rock forward. And exhale, lifting the gathered, just bring that tailbone, just kind of point it. So the tailbone's just kind of doing like this, right? Inhale, it rolls back towards the mat. Exhale, rolls up into the ceiling. Inhale, pop the booty, arch your back, cow pose. Exhale, cat pose. There you go. Inhale, try and keep these bottom two ribs coming towards each other and fan out the ribs instead of the inhale. Inhale, like with a punch in the stomach, keep that tone to move the breath and the organs down. And then exhale. Exhale, lift and gather. There you go, feel that? Kind of? You're holding your breath. Okay. Lift and gather. Inhale, think about that hand again. Yeah, and the body's so used to doing it backwards
Yeah.
that it feels wrong and it really confuses us. It took me a long time to get my mind unconfused about the movement. Inhale, lift back forward. So think cat-cow, right? You know cat-cow.
Right.
Cat-cow, you're just doing cat-cow with your arms back. You just turn it upside down. So if you want to put your hands up like you would in, like, you know, like you would in cat-cow, think cow. And cat. Cat, you push the arch into the floor. Inhale, cow, chest comes forward, expands, back arches, exhale. There you go. And just bring more knitting into it, yeah. Just trying to get that core support. When we're doing the belly breath, we break that core support so our spine can really communicate fully, and we just don't have that. It gives us that low self-esteem, low confidence, right? So we don't have that break in connection. So we want to learn to keep that support of the girdle, that belly kind of cinched. How's everybody doing? Thank you for your patience. All right, we're getting close to our time, but I want to go over one more thing I forgot to say with the goddess squat, right? So with goddess squat, here y'all can just turn your head to see me. With goddess squat, it's a really exaggerated movement, right? And so when we started, it took me a while to start to think about when I was outside of class. I only had a weekend training, so I trained my body on my own from there. So I like to give this weekly classes so that you have that support to come back to and practice and re-understand and reorganize. But I would be like at the grocery store. Those are usually the moments I would find myself thinking about it or having a moment to think about it, and I would be like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's kind of like that second diaphragm. You want it to move in the same direction. So as I inhale, this diaphragm goes down, this one goes down. I understand that intellectually, but in the body, I don't understand it just yet because my body's not used to it. So how can I reinforce that? So I would think about goddess squat. Instead of going into the exaggerated version, I would just think bend my knees, inhale, release, exhale, rock it up, right? So it's just that idea of kind of taking this, modifying it, so I don't look like a crazy person taking up too much space in the grocery line. Right? You just bend my knees and remind my body this is how it's supposed to move, and kind of practice that a couple times. And it takes about 6 to 9 months to reverse the breath. Hopefully faster with support, but expect it to take a while, and I kind of consider that like a gestation period for a whole new life. Like it's really going to change a lot of things for you, bring clarity, and make connections like, oh, this is why that happened, and it's wild. It's wild when things start to synchronize. So give yourself some time, be patient. That's all part of the practice too, being able to be in the mature breath. We are gonna stay on our backs. We're just gonna do Apanasana a little bit. You can place your hands on your knees, but also if you have the orange bolsters, you can, or if you don't have an orange bolster, you can use a blanket kind of folded this way. And we're just going to use that instead of needing to use our arms too much. So, and honestly, with this one, you can practice it either way. You can inhale the legs away, blow up that balloon. Exhale, lift and gather those organs up, create that deficit in the belly so that the legs can fold forward. Or you could do it here where you blow up that balloon from the booty here. Exhale, contract, create that structure, let the legs come forward. I kind of like inhale, legs away, exhale, contraction, but whichever one feels comfortable to you. We're just trying to blow up that balloon in the hips, exhale, using the breath to initiate our movement. So don't think too much about the muscles, just let that balloon of the breath move the legs forward or push them inward, and exhale, initiate movement. So relaxing any tension in the feet, the toes, any tension in the ears or the brow, jaw. Tension releasing across the chest and the belly. You can let the knees rock side to side, maybe drawing circles. Inhaling the legs forward, exhaling them into the chest. If you make circles, go the other way. A nice way to release the pelvic floor is legs up the wall. If you'd like to take legs up the wall or place them on bolsters, just to help relax the inner thighs. It's a cool exercise I want to be able to get to today with the straps. Let me see what time we got. You know what, we're gonna try it real quick. I'm gonna squeeze it in. Do a little sound back. Alright, so we're gonna take the strap. Come back up to seated for a moment. Wrap the legs about with distance, maybe close together. Yeah, that fits good. So this will kind of help with that sciatica pain, helping to release a lot of that tension in the inner thighs and the pelvic floor. I'm just going to use resistance here. Because we're always mostly kind of pulling in, I say compact, right? Because life jerks us around, and even like mental tensions can be interpreted by the body like a physical threat. And the body wants to contain itself, and so we have that natural kind of hold things together. So that's where that motion inward kind of comes from. So all these micro tensions in life that make us brace and grip. So I want to start to reverse that. Once we get the breath correct also, there's something I teach called ecstatic orgasm that helps us radiate energy through all of our chakras. Most people are kind of stuck in the sexual sacral area when it comes to that, so they only experience energy flowing through that area, the life force energy. But it can move through all of our chakras, and it's really powerful. And in order to sustain that, we need to have that pelvic floor breath in order to keep that fusion of the masculine, feminine, going. That rhythm balanced and harmonized. Now, I want to bring it down a little bit further, maybe right above the knees. And so here I'm going to use that tension and move my legs outward. And moving my legs outward, and we'll wiggle my toes. I'm going to try to soften everything but the muscles I'm using. Soften the buttocks, soften the inside of the hips, pelvis, maybe pulsating that pelvic floor. If you can feel into that for a moment, just make sure it's loose and relaxed. Again, just engaging in that pelvic floor breathing, blowing up that space between the hips, trying to spread everything apart. Exhale, lift and gather. And when we're lifting and gathering while we're in this kind of resistance moving outward, we're, cleansing those lines that, are used to being compressed. We can inhale and stretch them, and exhale while we have them kind of pinned out here. Clean the line as we compress. Let me exhale. Inhale and open. Exhale, lift and gather. So this one's really gonna feel into your core. Really let that base spread into the floor. Imagine your energy moving downward like light, filtering and rooting through the earth, spreading down to the core, also beneath the surface. Exhale, lift and gather all the nutrients and energy of the earth, lift it up and through the body, dispersing it to your cells and then outward, like an aerosol for this earth energy. We can really spread it through ourselves. But first we have to reach down all the way to grab it. Inhale and spread into it, connect and merge, fill up, exhale and lift. And as we can find that connection, this dependence and support of the earth energy, we no longer have to carry so much overcharge around. We can kind of let that tension, that burden go into the earth. It's got it. When we need it, we can get it. We've got that extra reservoir, not only of, an extra reservoir of breath, lift and gather, but also in earth itself, this larger body that we belong to. We're all just made of elements of the earth. We're not landlines anymore. We're cellular instead of plants. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale and spread. Exhale, lift and gather. Release that when you like. That's an intense one, but it's a nice one to help start to regain support in the outer body, not always depending on needing to contract in and hide and ball up. We can really show up in life and take our stand. So we'll come down just for a moment. Let's take a weight or a time. So we'll end here. I'm hoping to do this also, as there's so much I want to teach with it, also creating sound by using that pelvic floor, connecting the more subtle connections and tissues and clearing through that. There's so much to it. So I think I'm going to do like some events and workshops where we'll really get to delve into it, but I want to have this class just as a support. You can come. There'll be some things that you'll hear over and over again, but I keep, the exercises new and changing. So you can come back. If not, again, they're all on my YouTube, most of them, and I'll hand out cards there. But let's go ahead and close together. We'll end taking a few breaths. Let's inhale through the nose, blow up that balloon. Exhale, lift and gather. Take a few sighs. Inhale. Let it out of the shoulders. Inhale, catching that air like a kite down through the tail. One more. Bring our hands together in front of the heart. I want to thank you for your practice and taking time to release tension from your body. Every time we release tension from our bodies, we're releasing a measure of tension from the entire world, making it a lighter and brighter space. Om Shanti Namaste. Satnam. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Do you have any questions or anything? I'm sure.